A simple man hides from his daughters that he is a millionaire, but a secret changes everything. A briefcase full of money is discovered, raising doubts about his modest life. The situation escalates when an acquaintance and his community start to question his honesty. Now he must prove his intentions while fighting to protect his family. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know which city you're watching from. In Oakville Springs, a quiet town in rural Pennsylvania, the rising sun illuminated the modest facade of Tony's Garage, an establishment that had served the local community for over 2 decades. The weathered sign still maintained its original charm, much like its owner, Anthony Wilson, a 58-year-old man whose face bore the marks of a life dedicated to work. On that September morning, as on every other, Anthony arrived punctually at 6 o'clock to open the garage. His movements were methodical, almost ritual. He unlocked the padlock on the iron gate, switched on the fluorescent lights that flickered a few times before stabilizing, and set the old coffee maker to work. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee would soon fill the air, mixing with the characteristic smell of grease and metal. At his home, a few blocks away, his daughters were beginning to wake up. Hannah, the eldest at 27, was a teacher at the local public school and shared her father's same simplicity in dealing with people. Megan, the youngest at 24, worked at a local bank and had always shown a greater curiosity about life, questioning established patterns. The Wilson family's routine was known to everyone in town. They lived in an old house, inherited from Anthony's late wife, Claire, who passed away when the girls were still young. The residence, although well-maintained, had kept the same appearance for years: pastel-colored walls, a small front garden, and a porch where Anthony used to sit on Sunday afternoons to read his newspaper. On that particular day, while organizing some tools, Anthony received a visit from Mrs. Johnson, an elderly lady who frequently brought her appliances for repair. "Mr. Wilson," she began, adjusting her glasses, "you won't believe the latest news. They say an important businessman is coming to town buying up properties around here." The seemingly trivial news made Anthony drop a screwdriver. For a brief moment, his face showed an uneasiness that didn't go unnoticed by Jack, his longest-serving employee. "Everything all right, boss?" Jack asked, receiving only a nod in response. At school, Hannah was teaching her history class to the 8th grade, discussing the importance of preserving family memories. "Every family has its stories, its secrets, its traditions," she explained to the students, unaware of how significant these words would become in her own life in the coming days. Megan, meanwhile, was focused at her desk in the bank, analyzing spreadsheets and attending to clients, when she noticed a well-dressed man observing the bank's facade with particular interest. Something about him caught her attention, perhaps the way his eyes seemed to examine every detail of the place, or maybe the fact that, for a moment, their gazes met, and he flashed a smile that left her inexplicably uncomfortable. At the end of the day, when the 3 generations of the family gathered for dinner, as was customary, Anthony seemed quieter than usual. His daughters were animatedly discussing their days, but his thoughts seemed distant. At one point, Hannah mentioned that the roof had some leaks, and they needed to check the attic. "Let me take care of that myself," Anthony responded quickly, perhaps too quickly. "I don't want anyone messing around up there. There's a lot of dust and old stuff." His words sounded more like an order than paternal concern. Megan and Hannah exchanged intrigued looks. It wasn't common to see their father so emphatic about something seemingly so simple. The rest of the dinner passed in a silence, punctuated only by the clinking of cutlery on plates. Later in her room, Megan reflected on the day's events. Her father's words about the attic, the mysterious man at the bank, and a growing sense that there was something unsaid hanging in the air. She had always had a 6th sense for perceiving when things weren't exactly as they seemed. Across the hall, Hannah was also awake, recalling the stories her mother used to tell about how she met Anthony. According to her, he was already a hard-working and determined man, but there was something in her stories that never seemed to fit completely, like pieces of a puzzle that stubbornly remained loose. In town, the lights were beginning to go out one by one, but in the garage, through a small back window, it was still possible to see Anthony hunched over some papers. His worried countenance was reflected in the shadows projected on the wall, while his hands held what appeared to be an old photograph. The night wind blew softly, carrying with it dry leaves through the empty streets of Oakville Springs. The town slept, oblivious to the secrets that were beginning to stir in the shadows, ready to emerge into the light of day. Fate had begun to weave its web, and the seemingly tranquil lives of the Wilson family were about to be shaken by revelations that would forever change their understanding of the past. The next morning, the sky dawned heavy with dark clouds, heralding a strong storm. Hannah woke up earlier than usual, bothered by the drops of water that were beginning to fall in her room through a small leak in the ceiling. Determined to solve the problem before it got worse, she waited until her father left for the garage and discreetly climbed up to the attic. The dusty environment full of old boxes revealed decades of accumulated family history. The dim light entering through the cracks in the tiles created a play of shadows among the objects covered by yellowed sheets. Hannah began to move some boxes, trying to identify the source of the leak, when her foot bumped into something solid under an old quilt. Upon removing the fabric, she came face to face with a brown leather briefcase, apparently too new to be among so many old objects. Her heart raced when she realized the briefcase was locked with a small padlock. Curiosity, mixed with an inexplicable presentiment, made her continue her investigation. After a few minutes of searching, she found a key hidden inside a dusty accounting book. With trembling hands, she turned the key in the padlock, which opened with a soft click. The contents of the briefcase made her need to sit down on the dusty attic floor. Wads and wads of money, property documents, bank statements with significant amounts, and old photographs showing her father in completely different situations from the modest life she had always known. Among the papers were deeds to properties in different cities, certificates of shares in large companies, and documents suggesting participation in businesses much larger than a simple auto repair shop. In one of the photos, dated 20 years ago, Anthony appeared at a gala event, wearing a tuxedo and surrounded by nationally known businessmen. Meanwhile, at the garage, Anthony received an unexpected visit. A tall man with graying hair and an impeccable suit walked through the main door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's been a long time, Anthony," said Richard Myers, causing the tools in the mechanic's hands to tremble slightly. "What do you want here, Richard?" asked Anthony, his voice betraying a mixture of apprehension and irritation. "I thought our paths had separated a long time ago." "Paths separate, but sometimes fate makes them cross again," Richard replied, walking around the place and observing every detail with calculated interest. "I came to do business in the area and thought I'd visit an old friend." At school, Megan received an urgent call from Hannah. "You need to see this," the older sister whispered on the phone. "I found something in the attic that will change everything we thought about Dad." During lunch, the sisters met at Hannah's house, which was close to the school. With her hands still trembling, she showed her sister some of the discoveries. Megan, with her banking experience, began to methodically analyze the documents. "Hannah, this doesn't make sense," said Megan, after a few minutes of analysis. "According to these papers, our father owns several commercial properties in downtown Philadelphia, has million-dollar investments and... Wait, is this a majority stake in a technology company?" The sisters spent the following hours trying to connect the information they had in hand with the image of their father they knew. A simple man, garage owner, who always preached the values of hard work and modest living. How could he have hidden such a significant fortune for so long? And why? Among the documents, they also found old letters exchanged between their father and various businessmen. One of them, particularly intriguing, mentioned an agreement made 2 decades ago with a handwritten note in the margin, "Remember our deal." Silence is the greatest protection. At the garage, the conversation between Anthony and Richard continued, laden with tension. "You've built an interesting life here, Anthony," Richard commented, his seemingly casual tone carrying a veiled threat. "Your daughters have grown up well from what I could observe. Hannah is a teacher, isn't she? And Megan, a bank employee. Do they know about the past?" Anthony's face paled. "Leave my daughters out of this, Richard. What happened 20 years ago should remain in the past." "The past has a habit of catching up with us, my friend," Richard replied, heading towards the door. "We'll talk more soon. I'm sure you'll want to hear my proposal." Meanwhile, the sisters continued their investigation. Megan found an old newspaper clipping that mentioned a large business transaction with a photo of their father next to Richard Myers. The headline spoke of a $1 million negotiation, but the details were blurred by time. "We need to confront Dad," said Hannah, carefully storing the documents. "But how do we do that without him realizing we invaded his privacy?" Maybe we should observe more, suggested Megan. Something tells me this Richard Myers isn't here by chance. Did you see how he was looking at the bank yesterday? There must be a connection. The rain finally poured over Oakville Springs as if the sky shared the turmoil that now agitated the Wilson family. The sisters put the briefcase back exactly where they found it, but took with them copies of the most important documents and some photographs. That night, during dinner, the silence was even heavier than usual. Anthony barely touched his food, lost in thoughts. Hannah and Megan exchanged significant looks, their hearts heavy with the newly discovered secret. Outside, the storm continued, and a solitary figure observed the Wilson house through the curtain of rain, an enigmatic smile on his lips. The days following the confrontation at the Wilson house shook Oakville Springs with a wave of revelations that transformed the quiet, rural town. The arrest of Richard Myers, televised on national news, was just the beginning of a series of events that redrew the map of local relationships and powers. Hannah and Megan, still processing the revelations about their family's past, plunged into a journey of self-discovery and reconciliation. Each document analyzed, each story shared by Anthony and Sarah, Sophia's American counterpart, was a piece of the puzzle of their own identities. On a sunny afternoon, the sisters sat on the porch with Sarah, leafing through old family albums. "This photo," said Sarah, pointing to a faded image of two smiling young women, "was taken the day your mother and I decided to join the family business. We were so full of dreams and ideals." Hannah gently traced the outline of her mother's face in the photograph. "It's strange," she murmured, "to grow up believing in one story and then discover that reality was completely different." Megan, always practical, intervened. "But now we have the chance to understand everything, to rewrite our history with the truth." Meanwhile, in town, the repercussions continued. Anthony's garage, once a modest business, became the center of attention. Old and new customers appeared, some out of curiosity, others out of solidarity. Jack, the loyal employee, became a kind of local celebrity, with people wanting to hear his version of events. At the bank, Megan faced her own challenges. The revelation that she was the daughter of one of the country's biggest businessmen generated a mixture of admiration and distrust among her colleagues. "I haven't changed," she found herself explaining repeatedly. "I'm the same Megan as always, just with a more complex past." At school, Hannah found unexpected support. Her students, far from judging her, were fascinated by her family's story. "Miss Wilson," said Julia, the student who had previously noticed her concern, "your life seems like one of those soap operas my grandma watches." The comparison, though innocent, had its truth. The Wilsons' life had turned into a public spectacle with all the elements of a television drama. Family secrets, hidden fortunes, double identities. Anthony, in turn, faced the challenge of reconciling his two lives. The man who for so long had lived as a simple mechanic now needed to reassume his role as a businessman and leader. In a meeting with former partners and lawyers, he found himself explaining 2 decades of decisions. "I don't regret it," he stated, his voice laden with emotion. "Every choice I made was to protect my family and the values I believe in. If I had to do it all over again, I would do exactly the same." Sarah, who had been by his side during the meeting, added, "What we did wasn't just for us. It was about protecting a legacy, about doing the right thing even when it seemed impossible." As the dust began to settle, new questions arose. What would happen to the family fortune now that the secret had been revealed? How would Anthony and Sarah manage the businesses that had been dormant for so long? And most importantly, how would this new reality affect Hannah and Megan's future? One night, gathered in the living room, the Wilson family faced these questions together. "You have a choice to make," Anthony told his daughters. "You can continue your lives as they are, or you can join us in rebuilding your mother's legacy." Hannah looked at her sister, a silent communication passing between them. "I think we've spent too long living in a fabricated reality," she said. "I'm ready to face the truth, whatever it may be." Megan nodded, adding, "But we're not going to abandon who we've become here in Oakville Springs. This town, these people, are part of who we are now." Sarah smiled, proud of her niece's maturity. "Your mother would be so proud of you," she said, her voice choked. "She always believed you would be capable of great things." As the year came to an end, the town prepared for its first major innovation and technology fair. The event, which would attract participants from all over the country, was seen as a milestone in Oakville Springs' transformation journey. On the eve of the fair, the Wilson family gathered for an intimate dinner. Looking around the table, Anthony couldn't help but feel a mixture of pride and nostalgia. "We've come a long way," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "To Claire's memory and to the future we're building." The glasses clinked, and for a moment, everyone felt Claire's presence, as if she were there, smiling proudly at the family she had protected with so much love and sacrifice. As night fell over Oakville Springs, the town's lights shone brighter than ever, symbolizing not just technological progress, but the light of hope and renewal that had touched every life in the community. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but the Wilson family and the town they had helped transform were ready to face them, united and stronger than ever. The day of the Grand Innovation and Technology Fair dawned with a palpable expectation in the air of Oakville Springs. The streets, once quiet, now buzzed with the energy of visitors, exhibitors, and journalists from all over the country. The improvised convention center in the renovated old factory was a living symbol of the town's transformation. Hannah, responsible for organizing the event, was on the main stage about to give the opening speech. Looking at the crowd, she saw familiar faces mixed with those of strangers, all united by the promise of a bright future. "Welcome to Oakville Springs," she began, her voice firm echoing through the speakers. "A year ago, many of you probably had never heard of our town. Today we're here to show how a small community can become a beacon of innovation and sustainable progress." As Hannah spoke, Megan circulated among the stands, ensuring everything ran according to plan. She paused briefly in front of a group of young local entrepreneurs, beneficiaries of the investment fund she had created. "Remember," she said to the anxious group, "you are the future of Oakville Springs. Show the world what our town has to offer." Anthony and Sarah, observing everything from a mezzanine, couldn't contain their pride. "Look at them," said Sarah, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Claire would be so proud." Anthony nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "They've exceeded all our expectations. They've done much more than just continue our legacy. They've transformed it into something greater." The fair was a resounding success. Innovations in clean technology, sustainable agriculture projects, urban mobility solutions. Each stand told a story of how Oakville Springs was at the forefront of a new development model. A particularly touching moment occurred when Julia, Hannah's former student, presented a robotics project developed by local high school students. "This was only possible thanks to the educational program initiated by Miss Wilson," Julia explained, her voice overflowing with gratitude. As the day progressed, it became clear that Oakville Springs' impact went far beyond its borders. Representatives from other small towns approached the Wilson family, eager to understand how they could replicate the Oakville model in their own communities. In the late afternoon, a special panel brought together Anthony, Sarah, Hannah, and Megan to discuss the town's journey. The auditorium was packed, with people even standing in the aisles, eager to hear the story directly from the source. "Our story isn't just about business or technology," Anthony began. "It's about family, community, and the courage to face the past to build a better future." Sophie continued, "We spent years hiding the truth, fearing the consequences. But we discovered that true strength comes from transparency and unity." Helen shared how education became the pillar of transformation. "Investing in our youth isn't just about creating a skilled workforce. It's about empowering the next generation so they can dream bigger and make a difference." Mary concluded, speaking about the financial aspect. "We discovered that it's possible to combine economic success with social responsibility. Every dollar invested in our community returns multiplied in the form of progress and collective well-being." At the end of the panel, a journalist raised a question that was on many minds. "After everything you've been through, all the secrets and sacrifices, would you do it all again?" There was a moment of reflective silence before Anthony answered, "Life rarely offers us easy paths. We made mistakes, we made difficult choices, but looking at what we've built together, at the impact we've had, yes, we would do it all again." Anthony's words were met with an emotional ovation. At that moment, it wasn't just the Sanderses on stage. It was all of Riverside Blossoms celebrating their collective journey. In the evening, as the fair's lights twinkled against the starry sky, the Sanders family gathered on the porch of their home. The distant sound of music and lively conversations from the closing party reached them. "You know," said Mary, looking at the illuminated city. "When we were kids, I used to dream of leaving here seeking adventures in big cities. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Helen smiled, hugging her sister. "It's funny how life takes turns. We spent so much time trying to unravel the secrets of the past, and in the process, we built something completely new." Anthony raised his glass in a silent toast, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his family. Sophie, his partner in so many battles. Helen and Mary, the daughters who overcame all adversities and became extraordinary women. And in spirit, Claire, whose presence he still felt in every achievement, in every moment of joy. "To family," he said simply, his voice laden with emotion. "To family," the others responded in unison. As the stars shone over Riverside Blossoms, the Sanders family contemplated the future with renewed hope and determination. The secrets of the past had been revealed, wounds were healing, and the legacy they had built together was just beginning to flourish. The story of the Sanderses, like that of the town they helped transform, was a testament to the power of love, perseverance, and the human capacity for reinvention. And as the gentle night wind carried the promises of a new dawn, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as a community, as Riverside Blossoms. The following week saw Riverside Blossoms buzzing with a new energy. The success of the Innovation Fair had put the small town on the map, attracting investors, entrepreneurs, and curiosity seekers from across the country. The Sanders family found themselves at the center of this whirlwind of activity, working tirelessly to ensure that the town's growth remained sustainable and true to their vision. Helen, building on the momentum of the educational initiatives showcased at the fair, spearheaded the creation of a new learning center. The facility, a blend of traditional classrooms and high-tech labs, was designed to nurture the next generation of innovators and problem solvers. "Education isn't just about memorizing facts," Helen explained during the center's groundbreaking ceremony. "It's about fostering creativity, critical thinking, and a sense of social responsibility. We're not just preparing our children for jobs, we're preparing them to shape the future." Mary, meanwhile, was expanding her financial inclusion initiatives. The success of the local investment fund had caught the attention of national banks and fintech companies. She found herself traveling frequently, sharing the Riverside model with other communities looking to revitalize their economies. "What we've created here isn't just about money," Mary often said in her presentations. "It's about empowering people to take control of their financial futures, about creating ecosystems where small businesses can thrive alongside larger corporations." Anthony and Sophie, while proud of their daughter's achievements, faced their own challenges. The rapid growth of Riverside Blossoms brought with it concerns about preserving the town's character and ensuring that long-time residents weren't left behind in the rush for progress. "We need to be careful," Anthony cautioned during a town hall meeting. "Growth is good, but not at the expense of our community's soul. We must ensure that as we move forward, we bring everyone along with us." Sophie, drawing on her years of experience navigating complex business situations, became a key mediator between various interest groups in the town. Her ability to find common ground and forge compromises proved invaluable as Riverside Blossoms grappled with its newfound prominence. "Change is never easy," Sophie reminded people, "but if we approach it with empathy and a willingness to listen to all voices, we can create a future that honors our past while embracing new possibilities." As the months passed, the transformation of Riverside Blossoms continued. The old factory district, once a symbol of economic decline, was now a thriving hub of startups and research facilities. The town's main street, lined with locally owned businesses, buzzed with activity as residents and visitors alike embraced the new energy of the community. But amidst all the changes, the Sanders family remained grounded in the values that had guided them through their darkest times. They never forgot the sacrifices that had brought them to this point, nor the importance of the tight-knit community that had supported them. One evening, as the family gathered for their weekly dinner, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Julia, Helen's former student, now a freshman in college studying robotics. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Julia said shyly, "but I wanted to thank you all in person. The opportunities you've created here in Riverside Blossoms, they've changed my life and the lives of so many of my friends." As Julia shared her experiences and dreams for the future, The Sanders family exchanged glances, filled with pride and emotion. This was the true measure of their success, not in dollars or accolades, but in the lives they had touched and the dreams they had helped nurture. Later that night, after Julia had left, the family sat on the porch, looking out over the town they had helped transform. The lights of Riverside Blossoms twinkled in the distance, a visible reminder of how far they had come. "How you know?" Anthony said, breaking the comfortable silence. "There were times when I wondered if all the sacrifices were worth it, if hiding the truth, living a double life, was the right thing to do." Sophie reached out and squeezed his hand. "We did what we had to do to protect our family, to protect this community. And look at what's grown from those difficult choices." Helen nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Mom would be so proud of what we've accomplished, of what we've become." Mary, always the practical one, added with a smile, "And imagine how much more we can do. This is just the beginning." As the night deepened, the Sanders family sat together, bound by love, shared experiences, and a common vision for the future. They had faced their past, embraced their truth, and in doing so, had not only transformed their own lives, but had become catalysts for change in their community. The story of Riverside Blossoms and the Sanders family was far from over. There would be new challenges to face, new opportunities to seize, but whatever the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as a community, united by the bonds of trust, love, and shared purpose that had brought them through their darkest times into this new dawn of possibility. And as the stars twinkled overhead, silent witnesses to the unfolding story of Riverside Blossoms, the promise of a brighter tomorrow hung in the air, a tomorrow shaped by the courage to face the past, the wisdom to learn from it, and the vision to build a better future for all. As the months rolled on, Riverside Blossoms continued to flourish, but not without its share of growing pains. The rapid development and influx of new residents began to strain the town's infrastructure and resources. Traffic congestion, once unheard of in the sleepy community, became a daily occurrence. The charm of the old town center was threatened by proposals for modern high-rises and shopping complexes. Helen found herself at the forefront of these challenges, leveraging her position in the education sector to advocate for sustainable growth. "We can't lose sight of what makes Riverside Blossom special," she argued passionately at a town council meeting. "Our goal should be progress that enhances our community, not erases its character." Mary, with her financial acumen, worked tirelessly to balance the economic opportunities with the needs of long-time residents. She spearheaded initiatives to ensure affordable housing remained available, preventing the gentrification that often accompanies rapid development. "Economic growth shouldn't mean pushing out those who've called this place home for generations," Mary insisted during negotiations with developers. "We need to create a rising tide that lifts all boats, not just the yachts." Anthony and Sophie, drawing on their years of experience navigating complex business and personal challenges, became the elder statesmen of the community. Their wisdom and measured approach helped bridge the gap between the old guard and the newcomers, finding compromises that allowed for progress while preserving the town's essence. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves in Riverside Blossoms began to turn golden, the Sanders family received news that would once again test their resilience and unity. A letter arrived, bearing the seal of the state prosecutor's office. It requested Anthony and Sophie's presence for questioning regarding events from 20 years ago. The family gathered in the living room, the atmosphere tense as Anthony read the letter aloud. "It seems," he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern, "that our past has finally caught up with us." Sophie reached for his hand, her face a mixture of determination and worry. "We always knew this day might come. We've nothing to hide anymore." Helen and Mary exchanged glances, their minds racing with the potential implications. "What can we do?" Helen asked, her protective instincts kicking in. "We face this head-on," Mary replied, her tone resolute. "We've built something beautiful here, something that goes beyond just our family. We need to protect that." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. As Anthony and Sophie prepared for their meeting with the prosecutors, Helen and Mary worked to reassure the community and keep the various initiatives they had started on track. The day of the meeting arrived, grey and overcast, as if the weather itself sensed the gravity of the situation. Anthony and Sophie, accompanied by their lawyer, entered the imposing government building, their heads held high. Hours passed, feeling like an eternity to Helen and Mary, who waited anxiously at home. Finally, as the sun was setting, they heard the familiar sound of their parents' car pulling into the driveway. Anthony and Sophie entered the house, their faces weary but with a glimmer of relief in their eyes. "It's over," Anthony announced, sinking into his favorite armchair. "What happened?" Helen and Mary asked in unison, their voices filled with concern and curiosity. Sophie took a deep breath before explaining. "We told them everything. About Ricardo's illegal plans, about why we had to disappear, about the years we spent building a new life here. And?" Mary pressed, her analytical mind already considering potential outcomes. "And," Anthony continued, a small smile playing on his lips, "they thanked us. It turns out that the information we provided was the missing piece in an ongoing investigation into corporate fraud. Our testimony could help bring down a network of corrupt businesses." The family sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing this unexpected turn of events. Then gradually, smiles began to spread across their faces, followed by laughter. The kind of laughter that comes from relief, joy, and the sheer absurdity of life's twists and turns. As the laughter subsided, Helen voiced the thought they were all sharing. "So after all these years of hiding the truth to protect us, it turns out that the truth itself was our protection. Life has a funny way of coming full circle," Sophie mused, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The next day, as news of the Sanders family's involvement in the corporate fraud investigation spread through Riverside Blossoms, the community rallied around them. People came by the house offering support, sharing stories of how the family had positively impacted their lives. Julia, now home from college for the weekend, organized a group of students to create a mural in the town square celebrating the Sanders family's contributions to Riverside Blossoms. The colorful artwork depicted scenes of the town's transformation, with the 4 family members at the center, surrounded by symbols of education, innovation, and community. As Anthony and Sophie stood before the mural at its unveiling ceremony, they were overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and gratitude from the townspeople. "You know," Anthony said, addressing the crowd, his voice thick with emotion, "when we came to Riverside Blossoms all those years ago, we were running from our past. We never imagined that in hiding, we would find our true selves and our true purpose." Sophie nodded, adding, "This town, this community, you all gave us a second chance at life, and in return, we've tried to give you all the tools to build a brighter future." Helen stepped forward, her eyes scanning the faces in the crowd, former students, colleagues, friends. "Riverside Blossoms isn't just a place on a map," she said. "It's a living, breathing example of what's possible when people come together, when they choose hope over fear, unity over division." Mary, always thinking ahead, concluded the family's speech with a challenge to the community. "We've come so far together," she said, her voice ringing clear in the town square. "But there's still so much more we can do. Let's use this moment, this revelation of truth, as a springboard to even greater things. The story of Riverside Blossoms is still being written, and each one of us holds the pen." As the applause died down and people began to mingle, sharing refreshments and conversation, the Sanders family found a quiet moment together. "So," Mary said, a mischievous glint in her eye, "what's our next big adventure?" Helen laughed, throwing an arm around her sister's shoulders. "Always looking to the horizon, aren't you?" "Well," Anthony said, a renewed energy in his voice, "I've been thinking about expanding our sustainable technology initiatives. There are other communities out there that could benefit from what we've learned here." Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "And I've been approached about writing a book about our experiences. Maybe sharing our story could inspire others facing similar challenges." As the family continued to discuss their ideas and dreams for the future, the sun began to set over Riverside Blossoms, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. The town, once a haven for their secrets, now stood as a beacon of hope and possibility. The Sanders family had come full circle, from a past shrouded in secrets to a future bright with promise. They had faced their fears, embraced their truth, and in doing so, had not only transformed their own lives, but had become catalysts for change in countless others. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle overhead, The story of Riverside Blossoms and the Sanders family continued to unfold. It was a story of redemption, of second chances, of the power of community, and the enduring strength of family bonds. And though challenges would surely come, they faced the future with open hearts and unwavering hope, knowing that together they could weather any storm and emerge stronger on the other side. The mural in the town square stood as a testament to their journey, a colorful reminder that even the darkest secrets, when brought into the light, can bloom into something beautiful. And as the citizens of Riverside Blossoms went about their evening, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air, a shared anticipation for the chapters yet to be written in their collective story. For the Sanders family, and for Riverside Blossoms, this was not an ending but a new beginning. The truth had set them free, and the possibilities stretched out before them, as endless and bright as the stars twinkling in the night sky above. As the weeks turned into months, Riverside Blossoms continued to evolve, guided by the vision and dedication of the Sanders family and the enthusiastic participation of its citizens. The town had become a model of sustainable development and community engagement, attracting attention from across the country. One crisp autumn morning, Anthony received a call that would set in motion a new chapter in their journey. It was from the governor's office, inviting him to lead a statewide initiative to revitalize struggling small towns using the Riverside model. "It's an incredible opportunity," Anthony shared with his family over dinner that evening. "But it would mean spending a lot of time away from home from all of you." Sophie reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "We've come so far together. Maybe it's time to share what we've learned with others who need it." Helen nodded in agreement. "Dad, think of all the communities we could help, the educational programs we could implement on a larger scale." Mary, ever the pragmatist, added, "And the economic opportunities it could create. We could help breathe new life into towns that have been left behind." As they discussed the possibilities, a sense of excitement filled the room. It was clear that this new challenge aligned perfectly with the values they had fought so hard to uphold. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Anthony, with Sophie by his side, traveled across the state meeting with local leaders and community members. They shared their story, offered guidance, and helped towns identify their unique strengths and opportunities. Back in Riverside Blossoms, Helen and Mary took on expanded roles in managing the town's ongoing initiatives. Helen's educational center had become a hub of innovation, attracting students and educators from around the country. Mary's financial inclusion programs were being studied by economists as a model for sustainable local economic development. As spring bloomed, bringing new life to Riverside Blossoms, the Sanders family found themselves at the center of a growing movement. Their story of redemption and community transformation had struck a chord with people far beyond the borders of their small town. One sunny afternoon, as Anthony and Sophie returned from another trip, they were greeted by an unusual sight. The town square was filled with people, many of whom they didn't recognize. Banners and signs welcomed visitors from various small towns across the state. "What's going on?" Anthony asked, bewildered. Helen and Mary approached, beaming with pride. "Welcome to the first annual Riverside Blossoms Community Revitalization Conference," Helen announced. "We thought it was time to bring everyone together," Mary explained, "to share ideas, learn from each other, and inspire more communities to take control of their futures." As Anthony and Sophie walked through the crowd, they were overwhelmed by the stories they heard. A mayor from a former mining town shared how they had repurposed old industrial sites for green energy production. A group of young entrepreneurs demonstrated apps they had developed to support local businesses. Educators excitedly discussed new curricula that blended traditional skills with cutting-edge technology. The conference was a resounding success, cementing Riverside Blossom's reputation as a beacon of hope and innovation. As the event drew to a close, Anthony found himself standing before the gathered crowd, tasked with delivering the closing remarks. "When we came to Riverside Blossoms all those years ago," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed square, "we were running from our past. We were scared, unsure of our future. But this town, this community, gave us something we never expected. A chance to remake ourselves, to find purpose in helping others." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces before him. "What we've accomplished here isn't just about one family or one town. It's about the power of community, the strength we find when we come together to face our challenges head-on. Sophie stepped up beside him, taking his hand. Our story is proof that it's never too late to start over, to right past wrongs, to build something beautiful from the ashes of our mistakes. Helen joined them, adding, "Education is the key to unlocking potential. When we invest in learning, in fostering creativity and critical thinking, we invest in our future." Mary completed the family tableau, her voice strong and clear. "And when we ensure that economic opportunity is accessible to all, when we build financial systems that serve the many rather than the few, we create resilient communities that can weather any storm." As the Sanders family stood together, united in their message of hope and renewal, a wave of applause swept through the crowd. It was a moment of triumph, not just for them, but for every person who had ever dreamed of making a difference in their community. In the days that followed, as visitors returned to their own towns, filled with inspiration and new ideas, Riverside Blossoms settled back into its rhythm. But it was a rhythm forever changed by the events of the past years, more vibrant, more purposeful, more connected to the wider world. One evening, as the family gathered on their porch, watching the sun set over their beloved town, Anthony voiced a thought that had been growing in his mind. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I think it's time we told our story." "The whole story?" Sophie looked at him, understanding in her eyes. "You mean?" "Yes," Anthony nodded. "Everything, from the beginning. The mistakes we made, the reasons we ran, how we found redemption here in Riverside Blossoms. I think people need to hear it." Helen and Mary exchanged glances, a mix of surprise and agreement on their faces. "It won't be easy," Mary cautioned. "Reliving all of that, but it could help so many people," Helen added. "Show them that it's possible to overcome your past, to find a new purpose." And so, as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, the Sanders family made a decision that would once again alter the course of their lives. They would tell their story in all its complexity, its pain, and its triumph. Over the next year, between their ongoing work in Riverside Blossoms and the wider state initiatives, the family worked together to write their memoir. It was a process of healing, of confronting old wounds and celebrating hard-won victories. When Blossoming Truth, the Sanders family story, was finally published, it became an instant sensation. The honest, raw account of their journey from successful but morally compromised business people to small-town community leaders resonated with readers across the country. The book's success brought a new wave of attention to Riverside Blossoms and the Sanders family. Media requests poured in, and Anthony and Sophie found themselves traveling the country, sharing their story on talk shows and at conferences. But even as their influence grew, the Sanders family remained rooted in the values that had guided them through their darkest times. They used their platform to advocate for sustainable development, educational reform, and economic justice. Back in Riverside Blossoms, Helen and Mary continued to innovate and expand their programs. The town had become a living laboratory for new ideas in community development, attracting researchers and policymakers from around the world. As the 5th anniversary of the unveiling of the town square mural approached, the citizens of Riverside Blossoms planned a celebration to commemorate their journey. The event would coincide with the 2nd annual Community Revitalization Conference, which had grown to include participants from across the country. On the eve of the celebration, the Sanders family gathered in their living room, surrounded by mementos of their journey, photos, newspaper clippings, letters from people whose lives they had touched. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Helen mused, looking at a picture of their first day in Riverside Blossoms. "It's incredible," Mary agreed. "From hiding our past to using it to inspire others." Anthony and Sophie, their hair now streaked with gray but their eyes still bright with purpose, shared a look of profound gratitude. "We've been given a second chance," Anthony said softly. "A chance to make things right, to leave a legacy we can be proud of." Sophie nodded, adding, "And we've learned that the greatest success isn't measured in money or power, but in the lives we touch, the communities we help build." As they sat together, reflecting on their journey, the Sanders family felt a deep sense of peace. They had faced their past, embraced their truth, and in doing so had not only transformed their own lives but had become catalysts for change in countless others. Outside, the lights of Riverside Blossoms twinkled in the gathering dusk, a testament to the power of redemption, the strength of community and the enduring bonds of family. The story of the Sanders and their beloved town was far from over, but whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together, with courage, with integrity, and with an unwavering commitment to the greater good. As night fell on Riverside Blossoms, the promise of a new day filled with endless possibilities hung in the air. The Sanders family had learned that true happiness and fulfillment come not from running from one's past, but from embracing it, learning from it, and using it as a foundation to build a better future, not just for themselves, but for all those whose lives they touched. And so, as the stars shone brightly overhead, the Sanders family looked to the future with hope and determination, ready to write the next chapter in their extraordinary journey, a journey that had only just begun. The years that followed saw Riverside Blossoms, and the Sanders family continue to flourish. Their story inspired countless others, sparking a nationwide movement of community revitalization and social innovation. Anthony and Sophie became respected advisors, traveling the country to help other towns implement the Riverside model. Their memoir, Blossoming Truth, became a bestseller and was adapted into a critically acclaimed film, further spreading their message of redemption and community empowerment. Helen's educational initiatives expanded into a network of schools across the state, known for their innovative curriculum that blended traditional knowledge with cutting-edge technology and social responsibility. Her work in education policy began to influence national discussions on school reform. Mary's financial inclusion programs gained international recognition. She was invited to speak at the United Nations about sustainable economic development in small communities. Her models were adopted by countries around the world, helping to lift thousands out of poverty. Riverside Blossoms itself became a hub of innovation and sustainability. The town's population grew, but careful planning ensured that it maintained its character and strong sense of community. It became a popular destination for those seeking to learn about sustainable urban development and community-driven change. As the Sanders family aged, they began to pass the torch to the next generation. Julia, once Helen's student, became the mayor of Riverside Blossoms, continuing the legacy of progressive leadership. Other young leaders, inspired by the Sanders story, stepped up to take on key roles in the community. On the 20th anniversary of their arrival in Riverside Blossoms, the town held a grand celebration. The square was packed with people from all walks of life, longtime residents, newcomers, and visitors from around the world who had been touched by the Sanders story. Anthony, now in his late 70s but still sharp and passionate, addressed the crowd. 20 years ago, we came here seeking refuge. What we found was a home, a purpose, and a family larger than we could have ever imagined. Our story is proof that it's never too late to change, to make amends, to build something beautiful. Sophie, standing beside him, added, "We've learned that our greatest strengths often come from our deepest struggles. Riverside Blossoms gave us a second chance, and together we've created something truly remarkable." Helen and Mary, now accomplished leaders in their own right, shared stories of the lives that had been changed, the communities that had been transformed. They spoke of the ripple effects of their work, how the ideas born in Riverside Blossoms were now improving lives across the globe. As the celebration wound down, the Sanders family found a quiet moment together. They stood before the mural in the town square, now weathered but still vibrant, a testament to their journey. "We've come so far," Anthony mused, his eyes misty with emotion. "And there's still so much more to do," Mary added, ever the visionary. Helen smiled, looking out at the town they had helped shape. "But whatever comes next, we'll face it together, as a family, as a community." Sophie nodded, squeezing Anthony's hand, "Just as we always have." As the sun set on Riverside Blossoms, painting the sky in brilliant hues, the Sanders family stood together, surrounded by the legacy they had built. Their journey had been one of redemption, of second chances, of the power of truth and the strength found in community. From a family running from their past to becoming catalysts for positive change, the Sanders had transformed not just their own lives, but the lives of countless others. Their story would continue to inspire generations to come, a reminder that it's never too late to right wrongs, to rebuild, to blossom into something beautiful. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Riverside Blossoms stood as a beacon of hope, a living testament to the enduring power of love, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of family and community.